What's up, guys? This is Jakob. I'm content AI manager and I'm helping small, medium enterprises, entrepreneurs around the world with their content strategy, producing content for your business with AI tools. And welcome to a new episode of the Web3 show, where I interview experts around the world within the Web3 niche. So people who are within NFTs or new digital business models that separates Web2 from Web3. And I'm very excited today to speak with Matt McQueen, who is the co-founder of Coldytics, and I'm very excited to speak today with you about Web3. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Yeah, thanks. You're glad to be here and glad to tell you guys a little bit about how we're looking at using AI and kind of staying current as Web3 evolves.
Yeah, I'm really excited. That's really cool. Can you, before we speak about Web3 and Coldytics, can you introduce yourself in a nutshell? So who are you and why are you doing the things that you're doing?
Yeah, cool. So my name is Matt McQuinn. I am the co-founder of Coldytics. Before this, I ran operations and director of marketing roles at a couple of different seven-figure agencies. So I have a lot of marketing experience. I went to school for marketing. Marketing and sales is something I'm super passionate about, and I think it's a key component to any business. Most recently, in my last operations role, I had a large responsibility around data, and that was where I found a lot of opportunity and a lot of pain point for everybody that's using data in their outbound marketing campaigns. And so I've taken everything I've learned and all the genius behind my co-founder, Richard, who's in London, England. And we've built this product to kind of solve problems that I've experienced personally and that I continuously hear from other people as well. So it's a little bit about me. I'm in New Brunswick, Canada here, but we serve clients all around the world, and yeah, super passionate about this stuff.
Okay, that's already very interesting. So can you define or tell me more about these problems that you had, and then that's also clients of you had when it comes to data?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest problems that I really ran into around data in particular was scalability. I had trouble finding any good, reliable source of data that I was able to scale outbound marketing campaigns with. And I just want to pause because it looks like your screen gets a little bit frozen. Is my audio coming through still good?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds great. Yeah. So when I talk about unscalability in data, what I mean is it's hard to get something that you can replicate with data. So you may need a list, let's say, for an outbound email campaign, a cold email campaign, and you need to talk to plumbers in the state of Wyoming. Well, if you were to go and scrape the internet for plumbers in the state of Wyoming, you're going to get plumbers, you're going to get HVAC installation companies, you're going to get HVAC sales companies, you'll get wholesalers, you get everything under the sun. Right. And you can try and hire people to go through and refine that a little bit, but it's a very tedious process that doesn't have a lot of consistency in its output. And we said, why is there no one place that somebody can go to? Sorry, I'm just going to mute that. Why is there no place that one person can go to really just produce the output of good data at scale repeatedly? There's no one place. And so you could go to a database, but the problem with the database is everybody's selling to those lists. Right? How come you can't get fresh data consistently? And so that's the problem we're trying to solve, is saying, hey, marketing agencies convert better. Companies make more money when they're reaching out to fresh prospects that aren't just beaten to death from a database contact list every single day. And so that's what we're trying to solve, is how do you take contact information? How do you find all of this stuff that's out there on the web and provide it to people consistently with a top tier level of quality? And so there's definitely room for AI. And you know, it's starting in our story right now. We're doing a lot of repeatable process automation, or RPA. And as we are evolving our product, we're looking at ways to fit AI into what we do. So we can kind of have a learning component or a machine learning component of, hey, when this type of criteria comes in, we've learned X, Y, and Z about the satisfaction of the output that we did before. Here's where we can make an optimization or an improvement, and continuously feed our scraping mechanisms that are managed by people. And so that's what's different about us than most companies that are trying to move into Web3 or trying to get into like the whole AI component. A lot of people are relying entirely on AI. And I think it's too soon to do that, in my opinion. I think if you're innovating and that is what your company does, then that's the right place to be. But if you're not an innovator and you're not trying to create the most cutting edge technology, you're just trying to keep up and be an industry leader, I think you need to keep that human element of oversight, right? That kind of all-seeing eye in every system that's running to say things are working correctly, right? Even behind all these AI systems, there are people creating them, right? And so what we've said is, rather than just try to create systems that run themselves, let's keep people in the process so that way they can actually have an even higher standard of quality and a higher standard of assurance testing than a machine is going to put it through. And it will see things that machines can't see. So we're kind of combining the best of both worlds and trying to evolve in that direction, saying, hey, where can we incorporate these elements into our software and into what we do, while also pairing that with human intelligence to really supercharge the machines that we're making.
Yeah, okay. So many interesting points. Can you maybe shortly describe what is the product or the service that you offer on Coldytics? Can you
good question.
Explain that one?
So what Coldytics does, and it's geared mostly towards marketing agencies or companies doing cold email or cold calling. So within that context, what Coldytics does is we've productized the service component of building a quality list. So there's 3 places to get data. You can go to a database and buy a database. You can do web scraping yourself, or you can hire a researcher on Fiverr or Upwork to go out and do some of that list building for you. And we've touched briefly on the problems with doing so around consistency and output or the database issues. And so we're kind of doing the best of all 3. We're saying, hey, what if we built databases from scratch for a specific end user, a specific company or person, and also had humans running the scrapers and being very efficient, that also have a really high quality standard that it passes through every single time. So what Coldytics does in a nutshell is we sell marketing lists. We provide contact information to relevant prospects for companies, so that way they can reach out to their target audience with very, very little friction, and are able to do this at scale without having to worry about data cleansing or data sourcing or GDPR or any of those headaches.
Okay, got it. And are these, so for example, if I hire you for example, you can create me a prospect list on LinkedIn, or where exactly would you, or in what kind of, so in which area or which social media account do I get email lists, or how do I get the list? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can ask us for different data points. On the setup screen, it's all self-serve. So it's an online app you go through and you input what your criteria is. And we have some guided fields to tell you what inputs to tell us to look for. So you can select things like company revenue or technologies that they use, if they're advertising on Google or not, or Facebook or not, different things like that. So we have the technology to go out and verify all those things and search for all those things. Can we pull a list from LinkedIn? Of course, most people can. But what we're doing differently is that we're trying to encourage people to source lists from a different perspective. So I just put out a mini course on cold email with the best strategy that I ever had. And I encourage people to go out and find conversations that are happening. And you can use AI products to do this, to find and like listening tools like Awario or Social Studio from Salesforce if you're a bigger company. And you can find conversations happening about the pain points you solve a problem for. And usually if you're, I like to encourage people to look for thought leaders, right? So if you're in sales and marketing, Gary Vaynerchuk is one of the big names. So there's lots of posts that he makes that get tons and tons of engagement. And sometimes, for me, for example, those posts might be about cold email, or they might be about outbound strategies. And everybody who comments on that is raising their hand to say, hey, guys, I'm interested in being better at this. That's why I'm part of this conversation, right? That's what Gary Vee is only talking about, is being better, doing more. So when I see that, I then go and pull that post URL. I put it into Coldytics and tell the research team to build me a contact list of everybody who commented on this, as long as they're an owner of a tech company, right? Or whatever the criteria is. So then the research team goes in, scrapes the whole list and starts refining it, cross-referencing to make sure it meets the other criteria. So I get really creative. Another application might be that you could look at a press aggregator. Take PR Newswire, for example, prnewswire.com. If you were to go there and search for press releases, you could search for things like, I don't know, let's say green technology or solar installation. You could find a list of companies that have paid to have a press release on that website in the last 30 days. And there's hundreds of them, if not thousands, that have been talking about solar installation or green technology. And then you can get us to build a contact list of owners of those companies or executives of those companies by giving us the link to it. And we'll go through, just like I said, with our manual research process and the scraping combined, to give you a list where you can reach out to somebody and say, hey, saw your press release, or we both commented on this post together on LinkedIn. Like, those are way warmer entry points than anybody else is offering you. Most people just offer, hey, give us your ideal customer profile and we'll turn it into a list. And that's good. And sometimes that's all you need. But I would much rather see somebody take an extra step, find a relevant point to begin building a list out of, and then use that as your entry point into the conversation. Because if you don't have anything in common with these people, you don't have any ability to prove that you're credible or that you've done any of your homework, you're going to get put into the spam folder pretty quickly. So I really encourage people to take that extra step.
I like that. I really like that, and it resonates so much with on my own approach. And for example, I'm also tagging people when they like my posts and being grateful, writing thank you, John, or and try to start the conversation, because this is what makes your business bigger and
Right.
increases your business. And yeah, I like this idea. That's really smart and cool. I like it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You like I said, you're combining basically the AI technology with human interaction. So the human part is when the conversation starts, right? So the one-on-one conversation.
Yes, yeah. So what we're doing at this stage of Coldytics, we launched out of beta last June. So we're coming up on our first year as a fully launched product. And what we've been doing is planning and earmarking these AI implementations. So taking learning examples from what scrapers saw on websites that also had positive or negative feedback from the review of the end user who received the list. These are different use cases that we're looking to apply. Right now, what we're building out is the predecessor to that, which is the RPA, or the repeatable process automation, saying that there's lots of these things that we can do that a lot of people would probably call what we're doing AI, but it's not truly AI. We're just automating things that could be done manually, but there's no real intelligence. There's no machine learning component feeding the AI itself. So we don't call it AI. But our plan is to look at all these different applications that we're learning from really what makes human common sense, and training that into artificial intelligence, and then finding the points that we can feed the machine learning algorithm to build out a much smarter AI that's constantly evolving. I see so many softwares pop up on marketplaces like AppSumo or PitchGround, and a lot of them are talking about AI and their AI tools. And if it's not a GPT-3 tool, then it's very rarely an AI tool. It's kind of just RPA that's prettied up, and people call it .ai in their domain. And it's kind of funny because it sounds sexy from a marketing perspective, and it is cool. And what these products do is often very valuable, but it's kind of funny that many of us don't even understand what we're talking about when we talk about artificial intelligence. And it wasn't that long ago where I couldn't have even given you a definition, but that's how fast these things are evolving, that you kind of have to learn it in order to stay relevant with the direction technology is going.
Exactly. So last week I had this interesting conversation about automation also, and he made so he painted this picture. So automation are the legs and your hands, and AI is the head. So where everything comes together and where you build your education. And if you combine these tools, you can be very efficient. So I think this sums it up and makes it clear. And to your other point, I also see this, especially these days with the term metaverse. So it's a buzzword, like in the old days, digitization, and the same is true also to AI. Yeah, that's true indeed. Okay, cool. I mean, this show is about Web3. So was there a defining moment for you? I mean, Web3 is a term that is not that long used, but was there one moment where you said, okay, Web3 is important for me, for my business, I have to execute this more? Was there one moment or moments?
Yeah, the one moment for me where I didn't initially correlate it with Web3, but in retrospect, I do now, was when somebody was teaching me the fundamentals of cold email outbound. And they talked about building lists from big data. And to me, I was like, I thought it was a bit ambiguous to use that term, and perhaps it is, because it's a very micro use case of big data. We're not pulling in, we're filtering it so much, and that is kind of the point. That's how you get value out of big data, is by knowing what to do with it, and how to analyze it, and how to pull things out of it, whether that's analytics or usable, tangible contact information. So when somebody said to me, they're like, yeah, like we're building lists from big data, I was kind of like, are we really? And at first I kind of just laughed at them in my head, and I didn't really think, I was like, no, that's a stretch. And then as I learned more, I was like, you know what? It's true. There are millions and millions. Take LinkedIn alone. LinkedIn's the popular, topic for data sourcing. If you take LinkedIn alone, there's millions and millions of people inputting fresh information all the time. It's the only live database that's basically crowdsourced to this time, that's also publicly available, right? Normally this information, like let's say we all feed our information into Facebook. Facebook doesn't give you a search platform to go through like Sales Navigator does and filter through that data. You can try to find things, but you can't find people by their birthday, even though their birthday is on Facebook, right? Whereas LinkedIn is designed to basically offer a crowdsourced database that is feeding itself. And so that is really where, if you can tap into the right engines, the right places on the internet that already exist to try and organize the data that's out there, then you can very quickly get some very meaningful, very valuable data and information for your business. It's often just a matter of knowing where to look and what it is you're actually looking for, because there's so much out there. I get requests all the time from people. They're like, hey, we want to know their Google review rating, and we want to know their Facebook review rating, and all these different things. And if you ask them, what are you doing with the information? They don't know. They just want it in their CRM. And it's and it's like, well, that's not very useful then. Why are you spending time with that data? There's so much data out there. It makes no more sense to collect that than to write down what everybody ate for dinner last night, right? It does not make a difference if you have that in your CRM or not. So I think you have to keep the human element behind what you're doing and remind yourself, what's the value of the output? What is the actual end output, particularly in business? How can I quantify or qualify in some cases what the value of this data actually is that I'm handling? And can I actually output something useful? Because there's so many things out there that I've used or come across that kind of did cool stuff, and it didn't matter. It didn't add any value to what I did in my business. It was just another tool, just another cool, shiny object to distract myself with. So even if the tool is, made for a business like you really have to sit back and think, what's the actual output? Where does this convert for me? It was really easy in the early years when I first started doing marketing at all to write off most of data. I was like, this is not, this is for like people that go to university to study data and that build databases and crazy things like that. And then I quickly realized that even on a micro scale, you can be an everyday person that doesn't know very much about data, and from a little bit of the right information, do something very profitable that without that analysis or without that insight, you would never have been able to do before. So I think there's a whole world of business owners out there that really sleep on the value of data. And you know what? I think I'm guilty of it too. I guarantee you, if I had the right analytics going, if I had the right people to look at my data a different way than I do, I would probably see things that would make me a significant amount of money. But it's just a matter of figuring out the unknown unknowns and making them become known unknowns, so you can then prioritize and figure out, how can I apply this to my business in a way that's profitable?
Yeah, that's a good point. How to do it? So I got this statistic. It's a while now, but in Germany, I don't know about Canada, but around 80%, so very high number of companies are collecting data, but they don't do anything with it.
Right.
So 80 or 50, 85% of all the companies. Yeah. So they are building these silos, huge amounts of data, collecting about their clients, about their prospects, but they can't use it because they don't know how. So what advice would you give to companies? This is really good point. So if you look at a different angle, but do you have an approach how to change the angle on the data set and get a new picture, a fresh picture, and use it in a different way?
Yeah. We often overcomplicate business. It's really comes down to the three things in the power triangle, as Perry Marshall puts it in the book 80/20 Sales and Marketing. He talks about traffic, conversion, and economics. So you have to have a source of traffic, you have to have a mechanism that converts them into customers, and the economics have to make sense. Most people, if they're not a brand new startup, traffic is not the issue. They have the buyers, they know how to close them, they have a sales process. It's the economics that many people leave a lot of low-hanging fruit on the table. So I could go down a big rabbit hole that probably wouldn't be super relevant to this conversation, but I'll try and tie it back in. So to reverse engineer something as it pertains to data, the best thing you can do is look at profitability first, right? Businesses depend on profit. And if there is no profit, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You are going to die. Your business is going to die. So it does not matter how much funding you continue to raise. You're bailing more water out of a sinking ship. So within the context of profitability, that's the first place I would start. And then I begin to work backwards. You can take that picture behind you. Let's say all the red ink is profitability and everything else is what goes on in the business. Well, you as a business owner or an operator can look at that picture and say, I know exactly how the red paint goes on. I know exactly what happens. I know the order, the sequences, the motions of the brushes and the paint to produce that. Everybody else just sees the chaos of the picture and they can't make any sense out of how the red got there. They just assume it's thrown on at some point, right? But you as a business owner get these insights. And so it's really important to be somebody that has the overarching insight into the business to actually make use of this discussion. You have to have the big picture to really read into data and know where to pull more. So this is really pertinent for business owners. If you look at the red paint and you say, okay, here's the profitability. What was the sequence of events? What easy data points can I track here? Is it the amount of time it took for yellow and blue to go on? Is it the number of people involved in producing the yellow and blue paint, or that had to apply the yellow and blue paint? When you start to just say, hey, what is the data that's available to me, right? Like, it's really easy to get your employees to track time. It's really easy to track the number of things that you're doing, or that messages that came in, or time spent on the phone. When you can start taking those little bits of data that are already available to you, you don't have to hire some crazy data engineer to figure that out, right? Just tell people to write down or put in a spreadsheet how long they spent on the phone. Right? Like, it's not that crazy. You'll begin to, and it's trial and error, unless you're getting consulting from somebody that's done this before. You just go trial and error and say, okay, I know that when we take X action, we produce Y result, and Y result can be optimized to produce Z, or something that's a multiple of that. And that's really all that it is you're reverse engineering your profit system to usually improve your traffic or your conversion metrics, right? Those are the only other two things in there. You may find areas that say, hey, the economics are better. We can actually charge the same amount of money as we did before, but do half the work. Crazy, but it works. Or you can do the other way. You can charge twice as much money and do just as much business, but you never tried it and you have no data to tell you that it does or doesn't work. And the only way to get data that tells you that it works is to try and sell it for twice the price. Right? And so these are things that you can very easily get extremely valuable data on that are in every business. This is not data you have to go out to big data to source. This is data that you're creating all the time, and you're asleep. You're unaware most of the time to the fact that you're creating this data. It's stored in your computer somewhere because your computer knows how to make sense of it. You have to train yourself to make sense of that information and to do something valuable. All of this to say, it's kind of a long rant here that I've gone on, but I think it's really important to just kind of ground ourselves and remind ourselves that we know as business owners what makes our business tick. We know what makes it profitable. And it's usually something very tangential to what you've done the whole time. It's not something far off. You don't have to go study the Twitter algorithm, right? That's probably not what's going to make you very wealthy or very successful. Are you still with me there? It froze up.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry about the bad connection.
No problem. I think it's my end. So I guess my point is that you need to look at what's kind of low-hanging fruit around you, and it's often very close to what you're already doing. You just have to take a fresh look at it. And sometimes it can help to ask other people in your business or in a similar line of business what they're doing that works, where they get their traffic, how they optimize their percentages. And other people are kind of doing all the same things you're doing. So that's probably another nice shortcut that you can do to kind of reverse engineer increased profitability.
Mhm.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. So can you mention the book that you talked about? So the traffic conversion economics.
Where is it? It's right here. I'm gonna grab it. Yeah. So in this book right here, it's called 80/20 Sales and Marketing: The Definitive Guide to Working Less and Making More. I don't know if the picture is going to pop right out at me or not, but really it talks about finding the opportunities within your business. Here it is right here. If you guys get the book, it's pages 48, 49, show you what's called the power triangle. And the CT&E are conversion, traffic, and economics. And it talks about really finding the things in your business that make exponential differences, exponential growth happen. And that doesn't have to be new revenue, right? But it could be new profitability. So you may make $1 million this year and $1 million next year. But if you're making, 20% profits this year, this book kind of gives you frameworks to apply to figure out how to make that 40, 60% profitability in ways that you wouldn't have thought to look at something before.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Like the idea. So we already spoke a lot about data. So when we maybe go one step back and say, okay, what is the main difference in your opinion about Web 2 and Web 3? So the one of the biggest differences that you so far recognize, is it the data set or the mindset about data, or what is it in your opinion?
Yeah, and it's something that I'm constantly being educated on every day, and that I'm seeing new applications for. I would say the biggest and perhaps the most intimidating, and even you could paint it as scary, but I think it is whatever you do with it. It's like a weapon, right? It's only harmful when it's used that way. Is the data that comes out of it. We're living in a day and age where there's more data collected faster than we have any idea what to do with, right? We're collecting so much. Our phones are sitting here operating. All mechanisms on this phone are running. That probably both cameras are storing something. Audio is storing something. It's doing stuff all the time, collecting it. So much so that we have no idea what we're going to do with all of this. But some companies have shown that, hey, like this is how we're training machine learning. This is how we're training our AIs to interpret things, to create better experiences for people, to make people happier inside our platforms, right? That's kind of the neurohacking that people talk about. So I think that alone is the biggest difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is, at least in my eyes, the data that we're giving ourselves back. And really we're giving it to companies, which some people are very scared about, but it's something that we've never had before. We're able to take more information out of our day-to-day actions and create improvements to the real world around us based on that data when you know what to do with it. So I think the data that we're creating, storing, and learning from is definitely the biggest thing. And I would say one of the biggest differences that stands out to me is the way that we're integrating technology with our day-to-day life. Take medical technology or health technology, that people are wearing devices that can alert them to certain reactions or certain attacks or things that they would have otherwise never had the ability to identify before, or AI and different machines studying blood and being able to diagnose blood diseases faster than ever before, right? These are things that are making the world a better place and helping people get back on their feet. There's also the flip side, that somebody can take all of this information and say, hey, I'm going to make you feel the need to buy this product that's going to make you feel good for 2 seconds, and you will waste money on it and nobody cares, right? And then it doesn't make any sense to make. It's bad for the environment. It gets put in the landfills. All of those things are also true of the new Web3 and of the new data that's being fed out there. So as with anything in life, there are good and bad inputs and there are good and bad outputs. And it's all about what we do with them. And so if you're listening to the show or watching this recording, I think the biggest thing I can implore you guys to do is, as you learn to apply the crazy potential in all of the data that we get, is to do something good with it. Figure out, hey, what can you do that actually down the line to your end customer, your end user, is creating a better change in their life? That will ripple back into your business. So we all get caught up in the traffic conversion and economics, trying to make our businesses more profitable and make ourselves more money. But it's not really about that. The only reason that anybody is buying those things is because it's helping them in some way, whether it's to feed even an addiction or something of that nature. They're getting something that they perceive benefit from. So how can you take this opportunity that we have with data to better people's lives? And you have the power, enormous power as a business owner, to really change hundreds, thousands, millions of people's lives, depending on the business you're in. And think about the ripple effect that that has. So let's say, for example, to make this tangible, let's say you're in pool manufacturing. You manufacture plastic and fiberglass pools, right? And you know that these pools have a typical lifespan of let's say 10 to 15 years. Well, let's say that you look at the data of complaints that come back and the negative experiences that come back, and maybe you find that there are so many deaths related to pools leaking a chemical or something cracking or something freezing that creates an electrical current in the pool or something terrible like that, right? If you can take one of those little opportunities and apply this learning, this education to it and say, hey, look, let's study the cases that didn't happen. We know this is a 1% worst case scenario that rarely happens. 99% of people will never experience this, so we don't care. What if you said, hey, let's study the 99 and figure out the differences between that and the 1% and then make that something that we all focus on? Here's the good things we can do and the good things we can improve. And here's how we're applying what we're learning about the 99% of positive experiences to improve the end user's experience and make them safer, happier, longer lasting pools that make people's lives better. Because when somebody gets hurt or when pools need to be replaced, that's a headache and it's a problem for everyone involved. So even though that's a simple kind of funny use case, that's a way that you can really think about, changing people's lives for the positive. And it's not that complicated. You can just look for those little wins and see how that ripples back into your business when you're outputting such good things for other people.
Yeah, I love the use case. Okay, but it was not was a real one use case, or was it just an
example? Just an example.
Okay, yeah, it makes totally sense. I think when it comes to data, this is also something that I had. So you overcomplicate the thing. So just look at it and try to understand the meaning and try to implement it and improve things. That's the main message here. So when it comes, I get it that big corporations can use data. How about solopreneurs who may be starting their own, or maybe to some degree have an VA or something? How about them? Can they also use their data set to improve products, in your opinion? What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So there's a whole lot of tools that you can plug into as a new entrepreneur very quickly that track a whole lot more information than you need. Let's talk about Google Analytics for an example. There are so many data points in Google Analytics, and it's changing all the time. So you could, as an entrepreneur, invest all your time in learning Google Analytics and analyzing what your customers do. And I wouldn't encourage you to do that. And the reason being is that's probably not where the most obvious opportunities are going to come from. What it often comes from is, rather than a quantified metric initially, you kind of do qualified data studies. So perhaps you take your first 100 leads and you interview every single one of them. Even though you're a SaaS product and you don't intend to sell through demos, you do 100 demos. And then you study that, and then you write down, or you put in a spreadsheet, the consistent themes that you're hearing. This person talked about how important it is that this is available quickly, or that this output happens in such an order, or that it has such and such an integration. That's when you can begin to get meaningful data that you can tie back to reasons people told you they would spend money on your product, right? Those are some of the early easy wins, is interviewing and talking to the end potential buyers. And the best thing you can do is try and not bring all the data you have with you or your own biases and opinions into those calls. The worst thing you can do is go into those calls thinking you have your product figured out, but you haven't even passed $1,000 of MRR yet, and tell yourself and that prospect why the product is right or wrong for them. The only right thing is the direction that people are willing to take your product. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to kind of empower your growth. So it's really easy to take kind of the data that we already have in our minds and let that skew the value of the inputs that we get from our potential future buyers. You may get a little bit further down the line and say, well, I've already got a little bit established. I've already got my customer base and now I'm looking to grow further, which is the place that we're in. And so what we're looking for are the easy wins. And we're starting to study, hey, when we have an influx of customers, what's happening? What are we doing differently, right? After a webinar, we have an increase in signups. So do we scale webinars? Or we have a whole lot of traction right now around an email course that I put out. Do we try and find channels for that? And so we're doing tests right now to study what happens when we promote it through X, Y, and Z channel, because we know that organically, this is getting a lot of interest. So if we take it to an accelerated channel or usually a paid channel, cold email is not necessarily a paid channel, but it is an accelerator that does take time and money to operate. You can start to look for those opportunities there and start to figure out where your growth will be. And a lot of that's trial and error. I'll pause here to touch on the topic of funding in businesses, especially early on. It was really appealing early on because we weren't even paying ourselves. We thought, wow, we'd be able to get a paycheck if we raised some funding, and we had some interest. And we said, let's just do other things on the side for a little while, and we'll just supplement our income ourselves and see if we can stay bootstrapped. And I'm so glad that we did this, because what we learned in the process is that funding can really just, unless you're getting a consultative partner in your business who can show you what the right moves are, who really perceive what I'm saying as somebody who knows what to do with the data you have and turn that into more money. That's what a consultant really does. Unless they're that person, they're giving you money for you to burn. And you might find through trial and error the thing that makes your company profitable. But I was part of a company that did $2 to $3 million a year in revenue, and they were 6 years in business at a loss every single year. And they had multiple investors from big companies that you'd know the name of, and they were losing money every single year with that person's money. And I thought, how did they get this money? Like, why did somebody give them money if it's not producing profits? And initially, there was a lot of hype and a lot of promise, but there were no consultative roles that came in and told them, hey, these are the operational changes you need to make. So sometimes venture capital can be good for this. Sometimes it can be your worst enemy. It can suck the life out of your business. So you have to take those things into account. But you can't just cheat the system with funding. A lot of people think that if you get $1 million or raise a couple $1 million, you'll figure out what that growth hack is to scale your business, when really it's like pumping money into a lottery machine instead of a scalable business that's creating a measurable output. Like, it's not the shortcut to making money from your data. You still need to know what to do with your data, and you might go a funding route to find a consultative partner who wants to invest in your business to help you make sense of your data. But until you figure out what you're actually doing that makes more profitability in your business, you're just like a chicken with its head cut off trying to make sense of nothing at all, because you're not making any money.
Yeah.
So I've gone off on a funding tangent, but I'll turn it back over to you to kind of gear us back in.
I just thinking, so to round this. So, but how did you start now with the funding story? I'm just thinking to go back to
really the way that I see it correlates to data is that people often collect money thinking that it's a shortcut to make sense of what they have. They take funding when really your business is just a bunch of data. If nothing else, it's just a whole bunch of data that some people can look at and say, hey, look, we took these actions, it created profits. Let's repeat that system. Let's learn more and make more money, right? You're collecting more data, learning more things, applying that to your product, and then creating more money as a result. But if you haven't done that first part of figuring out how to interpret the data available to you and how to leverage it to make more money, then taking money from somebody else to try and accelerate that process simply just makes bigger noise. It creates more chaos and more data that you still don't know what to do with. So if you get lucky, you'll learn something by mistake. But most people don't understand that you really need to understand your own business's data before you can try to scale it. If you don't get what's in front of you, then there's nothing to grow.
Yeah, or another way to say it is you have to identify your business model before you get some funding, because if you don't have a healthy business model that generates you revenue, you don't have to scale.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's so true. So I apologize for going down the rabbit hole there, but that's something I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, everything fine. Okay, what trends do you see within the Web3? So what do you think? I mean, there are a lot of buzzwords like NFT and DAO is also is something that I hear all the time. And I mean, AI has a longer history. I mean, when you go back to the roots of AI, I mean, AI is nothing is definitely older than NFTs. But what do you think will become? So when you look on the midterm, long-term perspective for the next 5 or 7 years, what do you think is becoming more and more important in the business life?
Yeah, I think the way we're integrating technology with traditionally more analog environments. So what I mean is having computers send back data from heavy equipment, for example, and telling a server where a piece of equipment is and how efficiently it's operating when different people operate it. These are different applications of the Internet of Things that are part of Web3 that are really transforming the way that business is going. So I think there's I'll pause here and let you kind of reiterate where you want me to take this conversation. Yeah.
Do you mean, for example, the car industry, heavy industry? So the Internet of Things, so to say, that when before something is broken, that I get this message. Okay, I have to change parts of a machine because otherwise it will be closed, and then we have a 2-hour delay or something like that. Is this what you mean?
Exactly. So I think that's a very specific example that you could apply to many things. Like perhaps if McDonald's planned fixing their ice cream machines on a better schedule and cleaning them on a better schedule that they studied from data, they could then create a better system that creates better experiences. And I think applying the Internet of Things to more products is probably what's going to happen the quickest, because it's really simple to do. It's not very complicated to plug into existing electronics, track some things, and send data somewhere, right? We're doing more and more of that with more and more technology. If you look at cars, for example, they've gone from being entirely mechanical beings to almost entirely electronic beings, right? So they're sending data. They have Wi-Fi that's pulled from their own servers into or their own places, doing things that we never even dreamed. And that's all happened probably in a 20-year span, that we went from listening to cassette tapes in a car to having everything sent from a satellite on Sirius XM, and Tesla telling you when your car is getting too hot for your dog, right? Like these are practical applications that I think we're going to see more of that in the short term, really, really quickly.
So is this the area of predictive analytics? Can we say this, or is this another topic? What do you think?
I think it's correlated. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So this is not only in the B2B area, but also becoming more and more highly, tangible also in B2C. So
yeah,
that's okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
On the long term, I think what we're going to see is kind of a dual reality almost come out of the metaverse and wearable technology. I think will come very close to a point where people will not be able to tell apart a computer from a person, and we'll be able to pass that test to really say, wow, we can't tell apart this AI person in the metaverse from a real human being. I think we're going to progress really fast over the next 20, 30 years down that road, where everybody is so quickly able to tap into and out of the metaverse or whatever it turns out to be, the digital presence of our day-to-day lives, I think will become very much integrated. And right now it might be in the form of smartwatches and Fitbits and things like the Oculus technology, but really those are by choice. You almost have to like intentionally use those products. Whereas I think we're going to more and more move into a direction in the long term that we almost can't tell it apart. It's so directly connected with each other and embedded in our day-to-day lives that when we get in our car and when we put our glasses on or our sunglasses, it's all right there for us and we can very easily turn it off and on, but it's always with us and it's kind of omnipresent with our day-to-day.
Yeah. So more the Iron Man model, so that you have the sunglasses and then everything around you is changing and there are notes and advertisement and things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
More the scenario. Okay.
I mean, if you look at what we have already, like look at what we already know we have in this type of technology. If you have a Google Home or an Amazon Alexa, you already have somebody listening to you in every room of your house that you've put it, and somebody that will talk back to you that is all connected to the internet, right? And then you've got like the Nest technology. They want you to put a camera in every room of your house, and it's tracking all that data. And so when you think about just how much technology is kind of creeping in right now, it's just encroaching on our day-to-day lives, and it's not adopted by most people at this point. I think that will quickly change to become the norm, and it will be weird to not have this type of connectivity, because it will be perceived as and it hopefully is a very positive thing in people's lives. But we know from the studies of teenagers and social media and cell phone use that it's not always a good thing. And so you're going to have to choose which end of that you end up on. Is it all about the money, or is it all about creating better experiences for human beings?
Yeah. It's. I mean, I love it. It's a tool at the end of the day, and you have to decide yourself. That's definitely something that I resonate with. Awesome. Okay, we're running a little bit out of time. Sorry for that one.
That's okay.
2 questions. So who can you recommend for this kind of live show? So somebody who's also maybe an owner who's within the Web3 or in the AI niche. Is there somebody who would be a good fit in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know what they're up to these days, but I'm actually going to pull a book out of my stack right now. It's holding up this laptop. Let me pull this book out for you. Give me 1 second here. So this is the guy that created the technology that we now know as Siri, but he first invented something that was a speech interpretation technology, and it became Dragon Naturally Speaking, which was a PC and Mac software.
I used this. Dragon?
Dragon Naturally Speaking, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
so-
used that one. Yeah.
Cool. So his technology, I believe, you could have to double check this, I believe was acquired by Apple, and then transformed into Siri, or it had some role in that. I never really looked into it because I didn't need to. But this is one of his books that I have, The Age of Spiritual Machines by Ray Kurzweil. So he's been doing this since I think the 90s. And he's really been an innovator on these topics and talks about stuff that most people would never even dream about, but it's life-changing technology. For example, the reason this guy came on my radar is my mom, who cannot figure out how to restart a computer to save her life, went to university and was told she needed a computer. And she went back, and she's a nurse, and she went back to get her master's, and she's like, well, I've never really used computers. I guess I'll have to learn it. And so she had no typing skills whatsoever, but took a research thesis and had to type many, many pages that were eventually published. She did it with the help of Ray Kurzweil's Dragon Naturally Speaking. And she spoke an entire research thesis that took over 5 years to actually put out. So that's kind of one of those practical implications of AI technology really changing lives for good, where somebody like my mom, who's technically illiterate, was able to produce a very valuable piece of content through a computer because of somebody that made it easy for her to access.
Cool. Really love it. I mean, yeah, I used Dragon I worked as a former journalist, and then you also have the interviews, and the big pain is typing everything. And if you have a tool like Dragon, you can speak and then it's already written down and you have 60% of the work already done. I mean,
Right.
that's awesome. Yeah. Cool.
That's totally crazy.
Yeah. We'll definitely check and try to get him on the show. And the last question, so if people are interested in to find more about you or get in contact with you, where should they go?
Yeah, the quickest shortcut to get in touch with me is to go to Coldytics.com and click on the live chat in the bottom right corner. That's the fastest way to get a response out of me because you're talking to me through my baby, which is Coldytics. So if you want to get a really quick response, that's the best way to do it.
And you are answering all the questions?
Not all of them, but I'm plugged into it and I see all the conversation that comes in. So yeah, if you call me out by name, you'll get a response and I'll join in. I'm going to see it. Same with LinkedIn and email. Email is probably my slowest channel, but if people want to connect, I'm more than happy to see how we can collaborate or just get connected.
Okay. I will definitely try the bot, so the chat on your website. So.
Sounds good. Okay. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you for your time, and really enjoyed it. And I think so I have a new point on data, so I definitely have to check also my own data, and really resonates with what you said. And thanks for sharing this one. And I always say I hope this is the starting point, and there will be also other live sessions that we do together. And hopefully see you soon. Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.